This is Jayden Eccles. This is my project over omnipotence. This is from the class Religious Philosophy. My teacher is Professor Guy Crane. This is my final project, and my college is Rose State College. I will start on step 1. I chose the topic omnipotence. This term means a deity. Our deities, or God, are gods who can do absolutely everything he, she, it wants. An omnipotent being would have maximal power. It seems that if God was omnipotent, he could do contradictions and paradoxes. This is something God couldn't logically really do. God couldn't make triangle square or circle square. I will be arguing how a singular God could not be omnipotent. This means a singular God couldn't do everything. God would have some incompatible attributes like omnipotence, omniscience, and moral perfection. However, generally speaking, it is argued that divine moral perfection and omnipotence are incompatible because divine omnipotence entails that God has the power to bring about evil, whereas divine moral perfection entails that God is powerless to bring about evil. I will chiefly argue that if God is morally perfect and omnipotent, then God is not omnipotent, since this means that God couldn't do really evil in a theistic sense. Now I'll begin step 2. One could argue that God has the power to do anything he wants, but that giving his moral perfection and infinite knowledge of moral truth, he would never choose to do certain things. God couldn't become evil, it seems, for he is incorruptible as a common theistic attribute of his omnipotence. Also, God couldn't become evil, for from an omnipotent theistic standpoint, he is true goodness. God is not really omnipotent in all ways in a traditional theistic sense. God can't do evil and can't unlearn knowledge. God isn't omnipotent, for even if he had evil desires, he couldn't do them from a theistic standpoint, for God is perfectly good. God is traditionally affinitively wise, so if something was wrong for a human to do, he wouldn't approve of it. God wouldn't set a human on an evil path. If evil is wrong to an all-wise God, then God wouldn't commit evil. God would set up the system where people are judged from their actions for right and wrong, for only he understands right and wrong. God's true nature, it seems, is an ultimate judger, which he can't deny in himself. God has theistic titles such as moral lawgiver, love giver, and creator, which are things in his essential nature he couldn't go against. These titles make it where God couldn't do evil. Now I will be going over step 3, the rebuttal. Most people think traditionally God is morally perfect, but what if God was not morally perfect? God might not like traditional things that humans like 30 Rock, and different things like that if he wasn't morally perfect. But if he was morally perfect, he might like things like 30 Rock. An ability to choose evil might be a strength for an omnipotent being such as God, because God ultimately would know how to use that evil. But it feels like humans would think that'd be unreasonable. God's true nature could be evil against humans, for he could have a selfish nature that us humans can't comprehend. It seems true that humans couldn't stop this version of the God of the universe. It seems God could do evil in a human incarnation body if he ignored his divine moral perfection attributes. If God was omnipotent without having divine moral perfection, God could have an abominable nature where he could lie and sin, but this abominable nature would still not make him omnipotent, for he would lose the title of being morally perfect. This is the beginning of step 4. The step 3 objection fails to refute the step 2 argument. He does not have the ability to bring about certain logically possible states of affairs, such as all innocent creatures being maliciously tortured forever. It seems possible to imagine a greater being who is morally perfect, makes free will creatures, and who chooses good over evil. It seems God having ultimate knowledge of true light over true darkness would make it where God couldn't even attempt to go against humans even if he had an abominable nature, like sinning was selfish. God couldn't have an evil nature, for the death, tragedy, woe, evil, heartache he creates in life makes it where people get more life and love. God is glorious in a traditional theistic sense, and God wouldn't compromise his goodness by sinning. God has ultimate purpose and an ultimate conscience, which would make it where he couldn't permit woe on his creatures. God, creating his creatures, forces them to have care over his creatures, which God himself can't eradicate from himself. God literally must care about his creatures, for it's part of his nature and part of biology itself. God, it seems, can be omnipotent, for he can't be evil with biology. He can't go against true light, especially if he is true light in a theistic sense. Death in the world creates goodness and life. God can't stop, and God couldn't go against an ultimate conscience that is just rooted in him that he can't eradicate. That is the end of step 4. This is the first page of my works cited page. This is the second page of my works cited page. I hope you enjoyed my topic over omnipotence, and thank you for teaching this year.